So, culture and cultural heritage have high priority in Europe. 2018 is the first year of European cultural heritage. The idea of the year has been to encourage Europeans to discover and engage with culture and traditions, and secondly, to, of course, reinforce a common European sense of identity through that culture. I'm really delighted to have with us this afternoon Silvia COSTA, who is an MEP in the European Parliament. Silvia, the European Year of Cultural Heritage has been a busy year for you, I think, no? So please come, Silvia, come and take a seat. Silvia is the S&D, the Socialist Coordinator in the Committee on Culture and Education. You're also the Rapporteur, please take a seat, for the Creative Europe program, where we have very close discussions and engagement. And of course, you used to be the chair of the committee in the European Parliament. So Silvia is really one of our champions, and it's really wonderful to have her here. Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome to the stage, please, Pedro Santos, I think, Portuguese originally. Please, Pedro. He's the head of the Competence Centre for Cultural Heritage Digitization at the Fraunhofer Institute for Computer Graphics in Germany. So, Pedro, you specialize in, let's say, capturing the objects, now capturing the data. You're going to talk to us about that. Next, we have Selma RIZVIC, who is Associate Professor of Computer Graphics at the University of Sarajevo in Bosnia. And Selma, sorry, you exploit the results. So basically what Pedro puts in for the data, you then you exploit those results. And we also have Michela Espagnolo, who is from the Institute of Applied Mathematics and Information Technology Documentation at the National Research Council of Italy. And Michela, you deal with the storage of the data. So once Pedro has extracted it, Selma has used it, but then you're keeping the data for it so that everyone else can use it as well. So I would like now to hand over to our speakers, who will each give us a short presentation of what their interest is in the area and what they're doing, and then we will open up the discussion and have a conversation around it. So Silvia, I think we'd like you to start, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here, also because it is very important, this connection between digital and cultural heritage. You know, as I said before, that I'm very fond of this matter. I try to do my best in the Culture Committee to give more centrality, more evidence to the cultural dimension of the European project, the cultural dimension of development. You know that we normally say that culture is the fourth pillar of sustainable development. Not only environment, not only economic dimension and social dimension, that's important, but if you have not access to knowledge, if you not express yourself in a creative way, and if you have not access to the cultural heritage, the culture doesn't regenerate itself. And so, just to say the philosophical approach to this matter, because sometimes culture is the last, is more marginal. But I think that it is so promising, the connection between culture and digital. But let me say that I'm very happy that there is a new approach, thanks also to Cultural Heritage Year, that has been a catalyst, as you said before. Mm-hmm. We fought a lot to have this year dedicated to cultural heritage in sense of tangible, intangible, natural, and digital. And I am very happy because the result of this year is very interesting, with more than 7,000 events, conferences, transnational projects, and so on. And we have this last conference at the end of the year, just now in these days in Vienna. But I remember just to think, our approach is dedicated to, is inspired to the Faro Convention, that is another way to see the content, cultural content, the cultural heritage meaning as participated, and the problem is moves on the centrality of access to culture, to combine culture, innovation, well-being, culture and social inclusion, and also new economy. And that's also the importance of the new language also, no? Of a digital, also for have this bridge with the new generations. I'm very happy that there is some new signs, new messages before, you know, that the beginning of this legislature, in the 10 priorities of the Commission, of Juncker priorities, culture was not mentioned. And so we make so many steps ahead, also thanks to DG Culture and DG Connect, that are very, very involved. In an horizontal approach, this meeting also is an example of this approach. Normally the Connect is there and the culture is there. I recall the high-level conference held in Brussels for the first time among 3 commissioners, not only DGs, but commissioners, culture, research, and digital. And so first message is that we, as Parliament, as Culture Committee, but as Parliament, ask to continue to this horizontal approach, also after the year. The legacy of the year have to change the approach. First of all, integrated approach, horizontal approach, to the cultural dimension also of a digital era, but also to consider the different policies in which we can put more emphasis on the cultural matter. Just this is premise, but because for us it's very important to have this framework. I am a rapporteur for Creative Europe, and now Creative Europe is more allow many more projects and innovation also with digital and projects about culture, creativity, media, audiovisual, also on web and so on. But important is that we have also to work on this direction, the literacy, digital literacy, and on the other side to experiment new also business model, also in creativity. And it's clear that in the crisis that we are passing by in Europe, but also in my countries, you allow me to say this, we can't neglect the cultural dimension of the European project to go over these terrible things, that is walls and nationalism and so on. And so this is a meaning also of this approach. For digital, imagine that we have to go on some in different directions. The first, you know that we have, just to mention something that is very important matter, also if we are, we have to go on, Europeana. I want just to mention Europeana. Europeana aspires to become the EU portal for cultural heritage. But we know that at this stage, only 10% of European cultural heritage is digitized. And so we have a very important objective goal to reach. We are not we are going, but in very, very not speedy way. And so at this moment, you know that Europeana currently provides access to some 30 million cultural contents for more than 2,500 organizations in a free and users-friendly way. However, in the recent hearing in Culture Committee, held in Culture Committee, we ask that more work is needed on content in terms of geographical scope, thematic coverage, and cultural interest, on metadata, in terms of multilingualism, data aggregation, and data inconsistencies, and awareness rising. But I think that we have to go on. We now have some new tools also in the next programming period. Digital EU, Horizon Europe, and the new InvestEU program that is 15 billions of euros for investment. You remember the Juncker Investment Fund? Ecco, so my Commission proposed to collect the 15 funds that we have in several programs and concentrate this fund. Why? We have not to address the improvement of this technical infrastructure in next program period, which will also support the use of digital technologies also for cultural and creative industries and for cultural heritage. I think that it's time for the EU digital strategy to indicate as a clear objective and priority the implementation of digital infrastructure also for cultural heritage, even within national digitization plans. You know that is not anymore supported only with the structural funds, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We need to integrate a very important and massive and a pluriannual effort at a European level to have this as a new goal of the digital strategy. Otherwise, we are terribly late, also comparing with the USA giant. And so, otherwise, the platform that we would like to have at the European level is ancillary to the others actors. Just one thing, and then maybe there is a second tour. For this also, in accordance with this strategy, inside the Horizon Europe, that is the new 21-27 program for research, for research, and there is about 100 billions of euros, no? And so this is plus for the future. We propose, together with the committee in ITRE, means industrial technology and energy, a proposal for a European cultural heritage cloud in a new Horizon Europe that has been taken into account in the new cluster. The name is Inclusive and Creativity Society. As European Parliament, we achieved to secure that 45% of this cluster budget goes to support research on cultural heritage and on cultural and creative industries. And so this can be a very important indication also for member states, because you know that we need to be at the end together in this line. But why, and I close with these references, why a dedicated cloud? Because it should be a collaboration space to grant accessibility to cultural heritage through new technologies, but also encourage and facilitate transmission of expertise and skills. We have a very important items that is digital skills and also the agenda, the new agenda, European agenda for skills must be integrate more the new digital skills that we need in cultural field. I know that on the next Friday in Vienna, during the conference, there is will be a presentation of a new study, a research on the proposal for which traditional and the new competencies for cultural heritage. Inside, all these competencies are crossed by new, in restoring, in the management of cultural heritage, in so many, in reuse of data. So there is a very large spectrum of also of new opportunities of work, and so we have to go in this direction, and also we know there is so many promising way to present, to organize the contents, and also to access to culture through digital, that we are that are tools already disposable, but we have to invest more in this direction. If there is another another possibility to speak after our panelists. I would like to mention just another aspect that for me is very important, but for the first is enough.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Silvia. Thank you very much. Thank you. So thank you for reminding us, I think, why culture is so important in Europe and how we can build bridges with that. You reminded us of Europeana, of course, which is our flagship for digitization of culture. You reminded us as well that we've evaluated Europeana. We're working now on upgrading Europeana. Thank you for being a champion on the funding front, because that's obviously absolutely critical. And I think there was also one other important thing in what you said there, which is about digital skills in the creative industries. Because I think for too long, it has been the creative industries and then the digital industries. We have to get rid of that dichotomy now, because everybody who works in the cultural industries needs to be aware of digitization, needs to be using digitization, and needs to have the digital skills that are necessary for us to be able to advance in Europe. So thank you very much, Silvia. Let's hear from Pedro now about what's happening on the ground and how we are digitizing cultural objects and what your institute's doing in that respect.
I think I have a presentation.
Yes, of course. So please, I mean, feel free to go up to the podium. And we hopefully should, I think up there you should have a control for your presentation as well? Okay. Yes, okay, excellent, very good.
Okay, good.
Okay, I think I'll go over here.
Fine.
Oh, no. Okay, we can see it from there. So, okay.
All right, so I am Pedro Santos. I head the Department of Cultural Heritage Digitization at Fraunhofer Institute for Computer Graphics in Darmstadt, Germany. And at first you think Fraunhofer, or you associate Fraunhofer more with industry and more with technologies and stuff like this. And it's not any different now, but it's in a different context that we used to have at our institute as well. And it all began with a European project, by the way, 3D Coform, that you, Albert, were on the U side coordinating. And this was a project in which we had the usual suspects doing digitization or modeling and stuff like that. And I'm just showing you a slide, so why it is so important to actually preserve cultural heritage. And in this project, we saw the shortcomings of digitization. And we thought of potential use cases for 3D, because for 2D back then, we had companies like Microsoft and Google 2010, more or less, starting to digitize books, paintings, and everything that was 2D. And by now, you have machines that you will see, where you place books inside, and you can actually scan entire collections at an affordable level. And so for 3D, none of that was solved. And we thought of the potential use cases for 3D. So one, of course, is the documentation status of cultural heritage artifacts. So that's the prime objective, so to say. The other one, of course, is that you can actually work with them, and you can concurrently work with them, because originals, there's typically just one, and you don't really want to send it around the world, especially if they're fragile objects. So one of our goals was, well, if we were able to actually automatically digitize large collections of 3D artifacts, we could make them concurrently available to the scientific community, because we thought if we're going to do 3D digitization, it should better be the best possible quality we can achieve, and then we can do like decimation of models to any sort of other use cases, like even showing them over the web in museum shops for merchandising, for whatever. But the prime objective was to do best as possible digitization. And then, of course, you can think of, for instance, collections that are spread over different museums, where not each museum has all the artifacts of a collection, but you could go for hybrid presentations, for instance. Or if objects are too fragile to actually be sent anywhere else, then you can have hybrid or virtual exhibitions on location. And you see that phenomenon in Asia, especially in China, where after the Cultural Revolution, many objects were lost, and they are now trying to recover it. There's a rising middle class, and every little town of a couple of million inhabitants wants their own museum, but they don't have enough objects, so they prefer to go virtual as of now. So there are lots of potential use cases here in our trade for entertainment purposes, and so this was the situation we encountered like 2010, more or less. This is where it all started. So you saw there were the first guys doing 2D digitization at a large scale. You see on the right-hand side a company from the Netherlands, Picture. They do scanning pipelines, or let's say photographic pipelines, in which they can also already scan 4,000 to 6,000 herbarium sheets a day at probably 60, 70 cents a sheet. So this is the kind of things we were taking notes. And we thought we should do the same for 3D. And then, of course, the question is how to do this. And first you need funds, of course, and we had that idea like 2010, more or less, in the midterm review, I think, of 3D Coform. This is when we had the idea, well, why not go about 3D and do this? And so the challenge in 3D, it's not really new, because, for instance, I come from industry. I was deputy head of industrial applications, and we did have scan robots in production facilities for the last 20 years. But typically, you would have to explain to them how an artifact, how an object looks like. So you would need a CAD model, or you would need a template, and you would need to teach them how to scan a car seat, and then they would be able to scan 200 car seats, which are more or less the same, and then do quality control on them and stuff like this. But cultural heritage simply presented the biggest challenge, because all the objects were unique. And this is something you're going to see as well in the next slide. So what we witnessed was growing interest in 3D digitization. We saw that photography was still the predominant thing. And by the way, not even the national agendas, I mean, they had digitization, but what they thought about digitization was digital photography and not 3D digitization. So this is also something that we help to contribute to put into the national agendas and into the funding instruments as well, that there's an understanding that digitization is not just photography, but basically doing a digital replica of the real artifact. And not even just surface scans, but also volumetric scans, mass spectroscopy, so everything you can imagine to then fuse it into 3D consolidated models of real artifacts to work with. So, but then again, you get into the usual problems, the lack of budget, the lack of infrastructure, digitization and preservation strategies were missing and are still missing. We're missing standards as well, because if you go to if you buy a scanning device from the rack, you cannot even compare the spec sheets of different manufacturers, because they use different targets to measure their instruments, and it goes on and on and on. And digital rights is yet another issue that is still to be solved, as kind of default legislation for it is missing. So this is the situation we encountered in 3D Coform. And you see the challenge that there are lots of different materials, lots of different geometric complexities in the artifacts, and there is not a single artifact that is identical to another one. So the red by that time was the digitization time to actually capture them, and the green was the post-processing time to fill the holes and gaps you are not able to capture or lacked. And so the whole process was manual and much too expensive. And we thought of how can we automate that process, and we came up with a scanning pipeline. Of course, it took a while to get the funds, so we were able to acquire Fraunhofer strategic funds and a grant from the Federal Ministry of Economy and Energy in Germany to actually build the pipeline. And so it started all in 2013 with a couple more projects and with a new department in our institute, because we thought we make a strategy out of this and create a department for digitization to go from real to virtual. And then we created a department on 3D print to go back from virtual to real. Like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, we did that. So we were able to address the whole of it. So going from real to virtual and back to real again. I'm not going to show you the video of that pipeline, but I'm going to show you kind of a spin-off of this technology. So this pipeline actually was awarded, by the way, this year, the Europeana Award 2018 in the category of research. So that was quite nice to have. But we did a spin-off of it, which is smaller and maybe more useful for like individuals, because the pipeline, the exploitation is that the service provider takes the pipeline, goes to a museum, scans 2,000-3,000 objects, and then moves on. But of course, for smaller sizes, we can go for an autonomous scanning robot, for instance, and there I'll show you a video of how that one works. So this is all based on photogrammetry. It's just a regular scanning arm, lightweight, so people can stand next to it, and objects will not be harmed with an arm like this. And the way we do this currently, it's fully automated, such as our scanning pipeline. And we do a backlighting of the object. We overexpose it, so we get very bright images and a very dark contour of the object. And we cut the silhouettes out of the first 20 images that we do on the turntable to get the first 3D volume of that object. And then for this volume of object, and you see it appearing right now on top of the turntable, we do a next best view planning, which means that we developed algorithms that turn scanners into more intelligent beings. Because we never know what kind of object is placed in front of us, we need to first have an idea of the generic geometry, and then we calculate, and then we have a next best view algorithm that calculates the number of poses that you need, or let's say the optimum number of poses that you need to cover all of the surface without missing anything. So everything that the sensor can physically see, we see, and we take pictures. And from all those pictures, we then calculate the color-calibrated 3D models. So this is the way this scanning process works. And actually, in the end, the results that you're getting, and in this case, it's an arm we are already building for the University of Vienna to scan their Earth globe collection with a 100 megapixel camera. It's pretty high end. You get a resolution of 20 micron by now. So the distance between each measured point on the surface is 20 micrometer. The color calibration, for which there is no standard in 3D, we do by calculating ICC profiles. So you probably remember the color charts from photography. This is what we show to our cameras in 6 different perspectives. And then we calibrate our cameras in our systems with it. And the results that you see are fully automatic, so we didn't do any post-processing anymore on this type of object. So I don't want to promise the blue out of the sky, but if this works for 70% of collections, then we're quite a step ahead into reducing the price per object, because then in the end, this is what will matter to museums, to be able to get funds if they are able to say we're not going to digitize the usual 3 or 4 special objects that we have in a collection, but we're now able to scan 1,000 or 3,000 objects, and the price per object will be like dropping by magnitudes, maybe in the 2-figure range. So this is additional results you see of what such systems can do. As I said, we do have the scanning pipeline. At the scanning pipeline, we have a throughput of 5 minutes per object and also about 180 micrometer resolution. With a scanning arm and high-end camera, you can even boost this to 20 micrometer. And here you see the advantages of actually having an arm, because for that skull, for instance, which was scanned automatically, you can really go into the lobes and do a scan planning for that area, and you get it right. So that's quite nice. And then, of course, what other use cases do you have once you have the 3D models? You can use them for different purposes. So our vision is actually, and maybe you will see it later, that we go for 3D-centered work on the objects themselves. Currently, museum systems are very text-centric, but what you'd like to do would be to actually annotate and work on the 3D models themselves on the screen, web-based if possible. And so this is our vision for what we're doing and what we're heading to. This, yes, is yet another result. I was speaking about the 3D printing department we have. So currently in that department, we're also working on the ultimate printer driver for polyjet machines. So photopolymer machines, basically inkjet printers in 3D, so to say. And it's all about measuring the optical material properties, the reflections above and below the surface, and the way the material is arranged in the printing. In the printed layers is key to such results, as you can see here, because we arrange the material in a way so reflections above, below the surface of the original are mimicked in the replica. And this is the results you got for a small project in which the artifacts were on an island and humidity was pretty high, and so they wanted them replaced by replicas. So our outlook on digitization would be that we think autonomous, fast, and economic 3D scanning systems will have to be used. So it's like an industrial scale in a way. Sometimes it's difficult to say this in the cultural heritage domain because many are very cautious about their babies. And so we come from the technological side and we have to safeguard safety of those objects, of course. Color calibration is an issue for which standards are missing. The fusion of results from different scanning technologies is what we want to achieve. It's not just about surface scans, but we already did internal projects with 8 other Fraunhofer institutes to do volumetric scanning, terahertz, mass spectroscopy, confocal microscopy, see if we can match those results and bring them into 3D models and then work with them. Should be web-based, and then again, the applications you can see on the bottom of the page. And so I come to the end of this talk. Visit us at GAUTHIER 3D, and we're open for proposals. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pedro. That's absolutely fascinating. How long did it take to go from the pipeline to the small, very neat machine, which copies so well?
How long it take? Okay. Well, for the pipeline, we started in 2013, and the project went until end of 2016, so it took us like 3-4 years to actually develop that scanning pipeline. And we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so this is why we connected it to commercial 3D reconstruction software, such as Agisoft Photoscan or Reality Capture, Memento, whatever you like. And so we focused on really automating the process, geometrically calibrating the whole setup, and do color calibration, which is a topic on its own. And this is all stuff that we think we still have to improve. We're already there with the quality, because the quality is now like a still image from the real object, more or less. But we still have to improve in terms of standards for the whole industry.
Yeah, we'll come back to standards, I think, because it's no doubt a point that's going to come back through everything that we have to talk about here. And how long then before the neat little machine becomes something that people can think about purchasing for their own museum and so on?
Actually, I'm accepting interested people to actually build those machines ourselves.
Okay.
So typically the way we proceed to do exploitation, we are non-profit and we do applied research. And so the idea is that we develop technology, license it to manufacturers, and then they do the products. But of course, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, we can build ourselves. And then in the transition phase, then we hand over maintenance to the company that is then taking over. So.
Cool.
Open for business.
Okay, excellent, right. Cool. So anybody who wants to make an offer or get in touch with Pedro, he'll be here at the end. Okay, thank you very much, Pedro.
Thank you.
So, if I can now pass to Selma, can you tell us, in terms of what you're doing on the exploitation of the results then of this wonderful data? Yes, it will be up there. There it is. It is. It's there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor for me to be here. My name is Selma RIZVIC, and I'm coming from Sarajevo, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we are actually called Sarajevo Graphics Group. And the Sarajevo Graphics Group is a research laboratory at the University of Sarajevo, at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering. And we have been founded in 2005 as a small, ambitious group of people without any funding. And we were doing a lot of projects with our students at the computer science department. And our main research area is computer graphics, but we realized that these projects cannot be done well without interdisciplinary approach. So we engaged in our group artists, archaeologists, historians, writers, musicians, film and video professionals. And we have two groups of projects. One is cultural heritage virtual reconstructions, and the other one are virtual museums. Today I would like to talk about VR storytelling because through our career as a research group, we developed and we have been noticed by the European Commission, and we are very thankful to the people who invited us into major consortium. One was the Virtual Museum Transnational Network. It was a very successful network of excellence, and in that 4 years we really developed our skills and somehow imposed our knowledge to the research community. And then later on we have been invited in another project, Horizon Culture. And in that project, we are developing VR storytelling. So what is it about? It is about a storytelling which is all around you. So we are using the possibilities of VR immersive devices such as VR headset, head-mounted displays, and we want to tell our stories about the cultural heritage reconstructions. It's not just enough that you have geometry. Pedro develops great projects and scanning and everything, but when you go to a museum, you are always looking for a story behind, for a context of that geometry, model, reconstruction, archaeological artifact. And our expertise is in the storytelling, but not just any storytelling, but interactive digital storytelling in order to engage the audience and to tell the content in an entertaining and engaging, attractive way. Now, with the development of VR technology and VR video, our viewer has a point of view all around him. So now the film language grammar is not anymore applicable, because in the film you can stage your scene, your layout, and you can direct the attention through the film language grammar. But if something is happening behind you, then you need to attract the attention of the user to the part of the 360 degrees environment where something is happening. And that's really a challenge, and that's a pleasure of it for us. So in Culture, we are unsinking the sunken cultural heritage. It is about the underwater cultural heritage, and there are some shipwrecks and some underwater archaeological sites, because actually these underwater cultural heritage can be accessed only by divers. If you are not a diver, and if the artifact is not out of the water, you cannot see it. You can see some photographs, but that's not it. So one of the case studies that we are doing in this project is reconstruction of a city called Baia, which was placed close to Naples, and it was a kind of Las Vegas of the Roman Empire. So the Roman emperors and aristocrats were going there to have fun, to party, and so on. And there were a lot of villas and many art objects there, but unfortunately through history half of the city has sunk under the water, and now there is an archaeological part, half of it on dry and half of it 7 meters deep. So our colleagues from the consortium are researching the sunken cultural heritage there, and they recreated a villa. They created a great 3D model of a villa, but they want also to revive the villa and to put people inside. So we developed a storytelling method where we put the actors inside the remains of the villa. So we have a story about a rich aristocrat who wanted to buy a sculpture from a sculptor and to put it in his garden. And actually that garden existed in one of those villas, and the statue has been found as well. So we have several actors performing different roles, and we put them in the 360 degrees environments of the villa. Unfortunately, I cannot show here the videos, but I will try to tell you how it looks like. So for example, this is an interior space of the villa. You put your VR headset on your head. First you dive, and you see how it looks like. You dive virtually, of course, and see how it looks like underwater. Then you click on a certain point, and then the reconstruction appears, and the actors start playing their parts in various places in the villa. So you go from one room to another, and actors tell you their stories and what is happening with the aristocrat and his sculpture guest, his assistant. And that was one example that I wanted to talk about. So we can use these wonderful 3D digitalized objects, meshes, geometries, and breathe life into them using digital stories. Another project that we did lately was actually very surprising for us because it started as a student's project. One student of ours created Mostel cliff diving simulation. Mostel is a city in Bosnia and Herzegovina famous by its bridge, old bridge you see here in the photos, which was unfortunately destroyed during the war, but then it was rebuilt again. And the diving tradition exists for centuries where people jump from that bridge and they dive into the river, which is a very dangerous sport. So our student, one of the students from the mathematical faculty of our university, created a simulation of that dive. So you put on your head the head-mounted display and you dive, you jump. But we decided it's not enough because we wanted to teach our audience about the tradition itself because it's intangible cultural heritage. It's under protection of UNESCO. And we added the digital stories to the application. So first you listen to stories, but they are done in 360 degrees videos. So you can see all around you places around the bridge. And there is also an interview with the diving champion, who is a real person. And he wins the diving competition every year. And then after you perceive all that information, you are quizzed. And your knowledge is tested. If you pass the quiz, then you can jump. And that was a motivation factor to our users. And actually it worked a lot because everybody wanted to jump. So I cannot play the video, but this is my assistant here with the head-mounted display who just jumped, and now she's looking above her to the bridge. So these two short examples, I think that they can persuade you how the 3D digitalized cultural heritage can be used and how it can be a public benefit, because cultural heritage is very important for our history, for understanding of our history, and we can tell many messages through common cultural heritage. And I think that's also the point of the Horizon 2020 projects, because our project, for example, should present the common European identity in the underwater cultural heritage. So if we have this huge amount of wonderful digital data, we can put them to the general public use, adding the stories and presenting them online. That's also very important. We also created some desktop applications of these VR applications so the people without a headset can use it. But I think in a few years everybody will be able to use it because the technology is really developing fast. Everybody will have a headset at home. So what is also important is that the objects which do not exist anymore, which are destroyed or decayed, damaged, they can be revived through this interactive digital storytelling, which is always a combination of a 3D geometry. And if it's done well, then it's even better because it costs a lot, unfortunately, but maybe less and less. And we can reuse these results using virtual reality storytelling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Selma. That's great for bringing it to life for us. I think I want to be able to say, I want to be able to go home and say, I did the Mostel bridge dive at this point, because, and I like the bit about the training as well before you did it, but the whole experience around it, learning about the history of the situation and so on, I think just shows how you can really bring these things to life. So thank you. Michaela, please.
Okay, so it's my turn to thank for the invitation, which I really appreciated, and also thank to the previous speakers because actually they made my presentation much easier because you already told almost everything I wanted to tell. I come as a third speaker after the two technical presentations, and I will try to tell you what we as mathematicians, but applied mathematician can do on digital data. Yes. Okay. And in the preparation of the presentation today, I tried to follow the title of the session. So I will try to tell you a bit about the treasures that we are speaking about, their digital counterpart, and what we can do in terms of unleashing the potential of this digital data, with some perspective on what I see as the future here. So when we are speaking about the treasure, we heard already something about. So we have traditional early phase textbook, or in any case manuscript text document, painting, photographs, and 2D visual content for sure. Then we move to 3D, maybe image shape before 3D co-form, but this is something I wanted to underline. Just joking. And beside the single asset statue or an artifact, think about larger and more complex tangible cultural assets. Beside the tangible ones, already Selma spoke about, we have a lot of intangible heritage we should consider. This has to do with, for instance, dancing, music, which is also very important, oral traditions, also manufacturing traditions, so up to the pizza, which I wanted to mention also, it's also important. It's really important, but food is really an important part of our culture as well. And this has to do with all the intangible world of culture. Myself, I'm also a graphic person, so I'm more concerned with the tangible, physical, visual appearance of assets. So the talk will be more on this. And I think that Pedro was really able to convince us that digitization now is not only a possible solution, but is a viable solution. Probably now with these pipelines also, we have the means to streamline almost completely the acquisition of complex artifacts. For books is not so much anymore a problem. For music, I mean, as well, because digital music is everywhere now. For 3D, Pedro, yes, he presented something very interesting. I'm still not fully convinced that it is fully automatic, especially the post-processing in some cases, but we can argue a bit about it. So, how can we leverage on this digital content today? So, in terms of unleashing, definitely, I'm really fascinated by the potential that digitalization brings in this field. First of all, we have seen examples right now in terms of improving the access to digital cultural resources to everyone. For instance, underwater assets, I don't dive, I won't be never able to see them, but imagine also for impaired people what digitization can allow in terms of sensing cultural assets in new ways. Engaging access, again, Selma was really brilliant in showing what can we do with a virtual, augmented reality in terms of involving the people in experiencing the cultural resources. One thing that I didn't hear before, but it's really important, instead of taking the perspective of the person who goes in a museum, virtual exhibition, and so on and so forth, think about the professionals in cultural heritage, because actually the ICT capabilities coupled with the digitization enlarges really the spectrum of approaches to science in the digital scientific discovery in the cultural area. And again, Pedro showed very clearly the effect of digitization on preservation of important heritage. So in this sense, digitization in the cultural heritage also opens really a large spectrum of possible, also exploitable, commercially exploitable solution. With this enthusiasm in terms of digital capabilities, as I told you before, I'm still not fully convinced that it's today possible to streamline the adoption of these techniques in museums or in companies working with cultural resources. And also, what we noticed is that still the perspective is on the presentation of cultural resources rather than on the analytical capabilities that we could develop. And in this sense, I want to tell you a few things about a project in which we were involved, which ended at the end of November this year. And this was about archaeology and the use of digitization in archaeology. So we worked in the project with the British Museum, so it's a big player, but also with the Cyprus Institute on a set of fragmented statues, terracotta statues, and also some other secondary case studies. But this, the Salamis Collection was the most important one. Here, it's really tricky, I mean, because the fragments are eroded, fake colors are faded. We don't have all pieces of the same statue, so it's not a simple 3D puzzle. It's really about reasoning about possible potential reassociation of fragments and reunification rather than on the reassembly. So this was really challenging also in terms of ICT capabilities that we are able to sustain today. The key outcome and the key message of Gravitate is the idea of coupling what the knowledge in terms of traditional catalogs or archaeological notes or curators' documents, how this can be linked concretely to digital assets. To exemplify this, I put this little icon here. What we tried to do is to extract from the text-based description keywords that were relevant in terms of their relevance for the archaeologists. For instance, the presence of a decoration on a fragment, which is really important because it may suggest a given workshop or a given historical period or style, and how to extract automatically these text-based knowledge items and link them to specific digital instances of the concept in the digital model. So this idea of linking knowledge and geometries at the level of parts. This seems a tiny technical detail, but it is not, because once we are able to actually link these two, we can really open up the reasoning, the automatic reasoning at the level of details in the geometric models, not only taking into account the global geometric model. So the strategy that we try to follow in Gravitate is this coupling, and build a set of different reasoning tools, mostly working on the concept of similarity in terms of metadata description, similarity in terms of shape, similarity in terms of color or style. And we developed a full set of tools to work with this. Now the project is over, but you can find on the project website different details on this. I will try to go fast here. Just want to mention that in the project we also developed a set of services that act after what Pedro told about the digitization, because most of the time once you acquire a very high resolution model of also a little tiny object, you end up with millions of points that are also difficult to manipulate in a digital system. And so we also prepared a set of services that take into account this and prepare automatically different resolutions of the model, and integrated everything in a platform which is called the dashboard of Gravitate, and allows archaeologists to make reasoning and also to document their reasoning on different reassembly processes. So at the end, what is really important in Gravitate is this idea of coupling typical qualitative assessment or reasoning, typical of the cultural, more humanistic approach, with quantitative data. This automatic means to enrich semantically digital assets, and also this idea of, let's say, coupling geometry and knowledge, so that this information, this enriched information, can be used by other processes. This in Gravitate, that was about 3D, but this same approach can be used for whatever other kind of content, tangible or intangible as well. And I really liked also the introduction before, because today, actually, if we think about cultural heritage, we should not think about borders between disciplines. We should not see cultural heritage as something which is in one specific, more humanistic context, but we have to see it as one part of a full set of technologies that are today really mature and ready to be integrated together. Integrated also with data science. We have ongoing parallel session on artificial intelligence. Imagine what we could do here in terms of reasoning on large-scale collection of objects. And also more hard sciences. We heard about simulations. We could imagine integrating digital assets with these digital twins, with also complex simulation mechanism, to improve preservation mechanism, to forecast what could happen if, and so on and so forth. So I'm running out of time, but this is a diagram which shows, for me, the improvement and the evolution of the digital technologies in cultural heritage. We start from books. We are able to scan nicely 3D objects, but we are also able to scan with other scanning techniques like LiDAR or more aerial photogrammetry, whole sites, even cities in the long term. And we are also able now to acquire, analyze, and characterize movement. Think about dancing and other forms of intangible heritage. And at the same time, the interaction between the communities around cultural heritage really increase in terms of spectrum. So I conclude with this slide. What I really like is that today the technologies available give us the possibility to think about cultural heritage really in a holistic sense. From classical traditional museum, we may consider now the possibility to define or develop completely open-air museum in a historical center. Europe is really full of these treasures, and each historical center could become an open-air museum, properly equipped. One thing that I want to mention that it's not so frequently commented is the importance for Europe also about the industrial heritage, which is something which characterizes really a lot also our more recent past. We have the technologies, there is the potential to go in this direction. There are many challenges as well, because again, what we have seen today in terms of 3D models of nice status or objects is not enough to tackle the complexity of, for instance, an open-air museum as an historical center. We need to think about other ways to represent digitally more complex scenarios. And I'm very happy that someone before also mentioned about standard and interoperability. We don't have sufficient work done at the standard. Imagine also for the semantic annotation of cultural heritage, which is really the key enabling technology for more complex application. This needs to be standardized somehow, and interoperability as a consequence has to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Michaela, for reminding us that we can't stop yet. I think most of us were very impressed by what Pedro did, but you're saying, no, we need to go further, we need to keep going with the modelling and so on. And thanks for bringing us back to the holistic approach as well, no? We have to see how interdisciplinary, I mean, you talked about that as well, Selma, no? But how we can bring those together. I think what I'd like to do at this stage, because you've all been listening very patiently, is to open up first, and we will come back to the panel, of course. I mean, some of you commented already on what the others said, but I'd like to come back and keep that conversation going as well. But maybe at this stage, what we could do is go out into the audience and see whether there are any questions, comments. All right, great, I already see. Okay, there's a microphone on its way. So please, if you could say who you are first and where you're from, what your interest is, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Patricia Castillo from Eurecat at Barcelona. This is more a comment rather than a question. I see that when we speak about ICT in cultural heritage, we consistently speak about computer vision, computer graphics, and immersive vision. I want to draw your attention to the fact that there are already technologies for 3D audio and the capture of 3D audio. So my colleague Monica right here just coordinated a project called Vinci, in which we develop 3D audio tools for creating immersive experience for museums. And the fact is that we could, with 3D audio techniques, create replicas of the architectural acoustic of places for preservation, for modeling, and then recreating, and we could create open databases for these architectural acoustic replicas to be accessible and to be worked upon with, you know. And 3D audio technologies would actually contribute not just to preservation, but also to analytics and to the digital exhibition, because immersive experience with 3D audio, and in particular binaural audio, which can be experienced in 3D using headsets, could enriches a lot the immersive the immersive experience. So this was my comment. Really.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a good comment. Indeed, it adds to the 360 experience. And Selma, I think you wanted to add something on that.
I just want to say that, of course, it's true, and we have used the 3D audio in the immersive recreation of Bahia, because we thought, okay, now we have a great model, but what to do with the audio? If the actor is speaking behind our back, it needs to be heard. So yes, exactly, we did, our music artist has developed 3D audio panorama of the immersive environment, and it's impossible to do without, because it looks ridiculous without. So it's a really not dividable part of the immersive experience.
But for the Mostel dive, of which I'm very impressed with this one, but what is the audio behind that? Is it a kind of
No, but there is a splash.
There's a splash, okay, there's a splash. And you had your pizza there, no? I was thinking as well, I mean, yeah, so will we be able to do that as well? So it's not just about the sound, it's also about the smell and the...
I remember that you actually
Yes. Sorry.
In a conference also one part with the smell, right?
With the smell as well, okay. Yes. Sylvia, yes.
I don't know if it's the same 3D audio that I am speaking now. You know that we have a very particular program in Europe, very interesting and very loved by people, that is cultural itineraries. European cultural itineraries. The first, most important is Santiago de Compostela itinerary, or Francigena, or Santina. And I suggested many times to musicians to imagine an audio, not an audio guide of the itinerary, but music that can change in relation with the place and the time. It's a little dream. I give you this proposal to you because I am very, just to say one thing, when you walk in this very inspiring place with a sense of community or solitude, but in any case, is not only walking, because you decide to go there. Maybe that you have not to hear only music, rock music and so on, or something else, but some music that is very connected and emphasize the experience. And so imagine that we can propose something to invent on this. And there is many different musical traditions, and in the past centuries, but also contemporary. And this is a way also to make young musicians, to make research and to produce also. I don't know if it's the same 3D audio, but it's something that create an environment.
Please, can you give the microphone back? Thank you.
Actually, you could create the replicas of how the acoustics of a site, not just a confined site, but also on the outside, or a factory maybe, the sound of a factory, how to preserve that and preserve it in a 3D way, which means that as you move or you interact in a scene, the point of exactly, like it would work like the point of view, but the point of the sound, right? And you could create with a 3D model. You could create a musician, an artist. Actually, that was one of the use cases in the project Vinci. Could create 3D music. So you intentionally locate sounds in different places. So yes, that's the kind of thing that could 3D audio add to cultural heritage.
Okay, good. So we'll do that quickly then, Silvia. We'll do that next.
Maybe quickly, because
Pedro will do it quickly because he's good at these
the
things.
3D audio is like one detail of what I mentioned in the first talk, which is that we want to go towards virtual replicas of real objects. And could be objects, could be locations, could be anything. And one of the biggest challenges that we envisage there is the geo-matching of different measurement technologies, because they come in different resolutions, from nanometer to micrometer to centimeter accuracies. And so I think one of the challenges that we need to tackle then as the next step is to go towards consolidation of those different technologies into consolidated 3D models, either static or dynamic models, whatever they may be.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, another question from the audience.
My name is Rossana Damiano. I'm from the University of Turin. And, my question is the following. I have a background in AI and in computational models of narrative and drama and virtual characters. And along decades, I have developed some application for cultural heritage dissemination. But so I'm really convinced that a holistic view is needed, and that using storytelling is a real effective way to infuse life in deserted locations, in virtual reconstructions and so on. But this is not only preservation, this is curation, this is digital curation, where we need AI tools. And what I see is that the keyword storytelling, digital curation are often encountered in in calls, but is there, and what is the Commission, the strategy of the Commission to foster, to promote, to encourage in the next year the enablement, the development of these techniques, AI techniques for storytelling in cultural heritage? Because I'm regular, this is the first year I don't have a work at the Interactive Digital Conference, but I still see that it's a very difficult task to create a dialogue between cultural heritage and people from archive, from libraries, for cultural, often see metadata and things, but it's difficult to make these models to interact with storytelling techniques from AI. Okay.
I can try some. I can try just my answer. Just for an example, I'm totally convinced that we have to stress more. For instance, inside the different program as Creative Europe, I am rapporteur of Creative Europe, and I introduce some more references to a European narrative. So. Normally we say that the program must have a European added value. But this European added value sometimes is more referred to the partnership, to the cooperation, to other aspects, but not on the content. And so I propose inside the priorities this narrative approach, also, for instance, with a video game. I know that the video game normally is looked as only entertainment, but I know so well many young creative that are more for narrative approach, and also and in this case they need different professionals. Historical professionals, as you said before, no? Historian, artists, professionals on digital and so on, and maybe this dialogue can be supported. This is an example. But this more centrality of the narrative aspect and approach for me is so important also to link more. Also technical approach to the content, cultural content.
Do you want to say something? Or
yeah, I can say that, of course, I understood the question is what the Commission is doing, if the Commission will invest in more storytelling calls and so on. I mean, I cannot answer that, but for sure, I just wanted to say that storytelling is also a part of gamification, and gamification is a very wide term, but I think it enters in every area of life, because it's much easier to learn through game. It's not a game like for children, but these are educational games, these are simulations, these are things that can be tools for better learning, and of course storytelling is a significant part, so I hope the Commission will recognize that as well.
okay. I'm going to ask Rihanna that works on this to say something in a minute as well, but I think, Silvia, we can say that as far as the Creative Europe program is concerned, we do believe in narrative and storytelling. I mean, there are various projects there which focus on storytelling. AI is, I mean, if you've been in the conference in other places today, you will know that it's top of our agenda in terms of making sure that we look about development of AI, but AI in a way that it impacts on other areas of the economy as well. So that clearly is one thing we need to look at. But I will ask Rihanna as well if you could, or I'll give, hang on, we can, whoever's nearest, okay? Give Rihanna, because she's working more specifically on these things as well in terms of what she can add on that.
So thank you. I'm Rihanna Schwillinger, so I'm the head of the unit which is responsible for cultural heritage. So the support to the digital transformation of cultural heritage institutions. So Mrs. Costa mentioned previously Europeana. So this year the Commission published its report on the way forward for Europeana, and in that report we really emphasized the need for more high quality, smart, curated content. And that brings in all this importance of storytelling, of narratives, and the use of state-of-the-art technologies. So we know that if we want to have audiences more audiences, young audience, we really have to make the most of what we have to really provide better content and high quality content. So that's one strand of the work we are going to do now under the Connecting Europe facility and the future Digital Europe program. And it's important, that Digital Europe program, because it allows us to make us the bridge between these capabilities such as AI and HPC, and the areas that can make use of them, And obviously, cultural heritage, education, health are those societal areas where you can really see the positive impact of AI. And secondly, we have the work on Horizon Europe and cultural and H2020. And I think Albert, you wanted to add something.
Thank you. It's true. We will work with VR and augmented reality, artificial intelligence. That's actually the holistic approach that everybody was talking about. We need to mix all this technology in one area. And for this, you know that we are working now for the preparation of the next work program. This is for sure something that we have in mind. This is for sure something that we have in mind, not only in cultural heritage, but also in other areas. And I will tell you, for example, you were talking about game industry. In some of our projects, it's very interesting to notice that now the game industry is coming in our project in cultural heritage. Ubisoft, for example, is one of the partners that we have now in a European project. And I mean, it's a completely change of what we used to have in the past. There is there is a momentum at the moment concerning cultural heritage due to the year. I mean, thank you, the European Parliament, thank the Commission for that as well. It is a real momentum that we should not stop now, but we should do more, I think. But your question was really right. We need to think about that, and we are thinking about that.
You mentioned libraries as well in the question. I mean, did you have something specific in mind?
Sorry, pardon, I missed the question.
You mentioned libraries in your question as well, and the need to bring in more the libraries and the people who curate the content in libraries. Did you have something specific in mind?
Yes, but this refers to my experience in my institution, because I often talk to people from libraries and they are very competent, they are very, they know standards very well, but when it comes to dissemination and we needed to envisage, to design ways to involve, engage people in the heritage, in the library heritage of our university, and I realized that we miss the role of the curators. So we simply, in many cases, we don't have the right professionals. In many institutions, the role of the curator is often missing, because the people from AI should maybe talk to curators, not only.
Okay. There's knowledge that can be transferred there that's not being used, is what you're saying, yeah? We can't really move from the analog into the digital, and we're not really doing the proper translation. Yes, Albert.
I'm sorry to add something about that. Curator, we just started, or project are started now, about curation of digital object. 3 projects will start in a few days from now, before the end of the year, only about that. Okay. Only about how to train the people, how to interact with digital objects, how to show it, how to create them. So they are starting now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Is there anyone? Yes, please, there's another question over there. Sorry, there's 2 questions. Okay, sorry. Yes,
hello,
please.
My name is Richard. I'm with an audio branding company, but also with the Technical University in Berlin. And I have a not so holistic question, but more specific one to the last speaker. I forgot, but it's more like a question from a mathematician to mathematician.
Oh no, we're not going to keep it simple.
No. As far as I understood, to a great extent, archaeology and rearranging the artifacts is to a big part piecing the puzzles together, right? And you said that that was very what did you say, very complicated?
Complicated.
So
really.
well, I'm very curious on where the complication is, because is it a question of mere computing power, or is it a question of the models, or is it a question of the scanning of the artifacts or the definition of the surfaces? Because I'm asking because there have been extremely successful, two very different, extremely successful puzzle-solving incidents, like the one with Craig Venter, who did by brute force with the genome, but also that NASA gave millions and millions of pictures of the Hubble telescope to anybody in the world, and which I think is a great untapped resource to become like a hobby archaeologist. And if it's about puzzling these things together, wouldn't that be an approach? Or where is the problem? I'm curious.
The problem is that it's not a 3D puzzle. So we don't have all the pieces belonging to the same object. The pieces are mixed across different fragments, because these are statues that are found broken in the same place. So the pieces are completely mixed.
Yeah, but it's the same with the genome and the Hubble pictures.
It's not the same because the pieces are fragmented and eroded. There are missing parts. And the geometries do not, it's not about the complementarity of the shape. It's more about similarity in color or decoration that tells you something about it.
So it's more a problem of the models to be applied?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, it's the answer.
Okay, good, thank you, yes.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Jorge Sebastián, an art historian from University in Valencia in Spain. A comment and a proposal, I don't know. The comment, going on with the discussion about curation and interpretation, definitely there's going always to be interpretation. I mean, the data don't just exist out there. The fact that we are digitizing something and leaving out something else, the fact that there is always interpretation embedded into any technology, any technology. The point is whether we make that clear to our users, whether we are conscious about it, to what extent we are conscious about it, and whether through metadata or paradata, or how we make that patent to our users. And I think in many cases we're not doing a great job in that. And the second point, and it's completely unrelated, it's more from an institutional point of view, an institutional approach. Of course, audiences have to be always there, and I think that a very good test, so to speak, audience is the educational sector. We have hundreds of thousands of students from high school to, of course, university, graduate event, every year looking back at European heritage. Why not start with the students? Why not start with that audience? Of course, there is always market, and that's going to be there, and it has to be there. Why not establish alliances with the educational sector in order to facilitate that the new handbooks, the new manuals, the new educational resources are the first place to make use of these technologies. I say that as a professor who week after week has to think of open educational resources for class use. Why not begin that way?
Absolutely, I think that's a fantastic suggestion, that's what we should be doing, which is looking at it from the point of view of educational needs, because I think then we can't go wrong, no, if we start from that end. Okay, another comment, Rihanna, can we do that?
Yes, I'd like to reply to your suggestion. Actually, in my portfolio, I also have digital education, so I'm trying to make that link between culture and education. However, things are not that simple, because education is the responsibility of member states, and the Commission cannot go and say to the member states, this is the way you should be teaching in schools. We would have a revolution. They would all rebel against us and point it. So what we're doing is to call in projects and to build best practices and to say, look, when you have good immersive content, you can really engage students in difficult or non-appealing subjects. For instance, in one of the projects, they created an immersive documentary of Auschwitz, to allow students to really experience how it felt like when you were in Auschwitz. So through this, we can really bring in more schools, but I'm afraid there is no way for us to say top-down to member states, you should, you know.
Sure, but there's still a lot of things that we can do bottom up in the way that
Exactly.
you're
Yes.
saying, you know? I mean, if we show them how useful it can be, we show them
Voilà.
that kids love it and so on, then we can still get that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of our time now, and I would like to ask one last question of the panel, please. And of course, feel free at this point to make any other comments on what you've heard and so on as we go through. But supposing, Silvia, that we have our dream, and we get together all the culture ministers of the 28 still member states in Brussels sometime next year. And we say to them, we can get them to make one commitment now, one important commitment that will make a big difference to what we can do for the digitization of cultural heritage in Europe. So please, what would that one commitment be? What should we ask them to sign up to? If we're lucky, we might get some industry people in the room as well. You mentioned, Pedro, as well, that there seems to be, you know, on the one side, there are the cultural institutes, then there's this is an industrial application and so on, and somehow we need to bring everybody together. But what is the one thing that we would ask those ministers to commit to, all of them? All 28, because it's the beginning of March, not the end of March, so we can get them all to sign up. What would it be? What should it be?
There is a dream, but also connecting with the last answer. That's true. That we are going. My dream is that at the end we have a education area, European education area, not to homologare, not to have the same model, but to have more awareness of the common cultural heritage and culture and values, also in a digital, the digital approach, to enlarge the scope of the access to culture, to have more, for instance, in the program, in the education program, more possibility to have this common program at European level for knowing, for the knowledge of the common cultural heritage, not only national, not only regional, and maybe that we have to give this opportunity to students. But the problem is, for me, what I said before, if we decide together with the Minister of Education and Culture together, because this is both the approach, to have to dedicate to have infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and digital contents also created, no, at also at Europe level, a platform, a common platform in which we can access to have this knowledge of cultural heritage at European level, and to be more aware of, to be the sense of belonging to the Europe space can be deep. And so the dream is also, we are doing something in this direction. For instance, Solidarity Corp, European Solidarity Corp is a way also to have this, express your volunteering also on cultural items. Also, for instance, in Norcia, after the earthquake, coming from 8 countries, young people is directly responsible on the cultural heritage, destroyed in this case. On, for instance, with Erasmus, the new Erasmus program, that's a way to realize some dream. No? In an Erasmus program, we are put inside that also is the cultural institution and culture association etc. can be experienced by Erasmus students in the mobility, not only universities, because also cultural institutions made research or others. And so to enlarge the scope of the programs, inserting more the cultural heritage approach, but also the increasing the infrastructure, digital infrastructure, to be accessible and also to have these skills that you now are not so spread on. But I totally am convinced that we can start from these students most already sensibilized, or the diplomats and so on, that they are study on this matter, but they sometimes imagine that they are marginal respect to the future. They are the center for me.
So what you're saying is basically think cross-border, don't just think within your own member state, think cross-border. But then I think there was a nugget in the middle of what you said there, which was this idea of having maybe a common platform, a repository, where we can, because
a part of the programs must be dedicated to European cultural heritage. I totally convinced that we are double citizenship. And the second citizenship must be more feed with some content. Sorry, because I was a little very general, but this is the matter for me. We are not ours. Maybe now the students or young people know better than my generation Europe, and they are very free to move. But sometimes the content of this, the sense of belonging, depends also on this knowledge and this awareness, and so the policy must be also to have some common part of the program of education as Europeans. That's my dream.
Okay, thank you. So, Selma, from your side, what are we going to get them to commit to?
Well, our dream in Bosnia is to join the EU at first.
Absolutely. But one of the things that we have done, certainly with our Commissioner Gabriel, is that we are working much more with the Western Balkans with that in mind. So whatever we can get the 28 to commit to could come very quickly to the Western Balkans, I would say, yeah? So.
That's a hope. Anyways, I agree fully with whatever has been said, and I think that, for example, we have available many things that can be used in the education system. They are already done, they are for free, they are online. If we could just push our ministries to use what is already done. For example, Pedro has things that Michaela has, things that are already online somewhere, not maybe known that they are online and accessible. So maybe that could be the first step, just to use the resources that are already there, to reuse them, and then to build upon that. Europeana is a great idea. Why we don't step out in the immersive virtual reality way with Europeana to create this, to emphasize this diversity that makes us Europeans. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not really necessarily about something new, it's about using what's out there and making the example of it. So, okay, thank you. Michaela.
Yeah, a very quick answer and then a question.
Yes.
First, the dream is investment in improving the digital skills of professionals. This is the basis for sure, at the educational level and also professional level. Then one question to you is, no one mentioned it here, if I got it right, the infrastructure program on ERIS, which is actually a European infrastructure, digital e-infrastructure and also hardware. So it's a network of laboratories that are working on digital tools for cultural heritage. Do you have contacts with them, or?
Do we have contacts with, what is it called again?
ERIS, E-R-I-H-S.
Yes, okay, we do. But then, I mean, maybe strengthening that is one of the things that would be important. And then, Pedro, please.
Okay, so my 50 cents would also be like going towards education. So a friend of mine at Autodesk once said that preservation would start with education. And in times where nationalist tendencies take over and people get apart, I think this would be the way to go. We already have Europeana, and it could be more than just a repository, but it could also be a provider of experiences, of stories, of, you know, to be accessible through classrooms, because this is where really education starts and not just at university level or anywhere else. So this would be my aim.
Okay, so we should maybe get the culture ministries and the education ministries together at this point, no? Because unless they're working and pulling in the same direction, then we won't get there. Okay, thank you very much to the audience for your participation, but thank you very much in particular to the panel for your wonderful contributions. Thank you. And please, if you've got time, don't either stay or please come back for the Cold War showing, which is going to be in this hall. It's here. It's here.
Growth and the jobs.